we have a double film review for you.
Double whammy. That intrigues me. After watching the film, that intrigued me. But apart from that, we get a lot of hog again in this.
Yeah, we do get a lot of hog.
Are you saying perfect like your interpretation of the film, or perfect like you as a person?
Both. Welcome to The Film Angle, a podcast where we dive deep into the latest releases and unearth the classics to better our cinephilic curiosity. I'm Alex.
And I'm Chris.
And today we have a double film review for you. We are reviewing...
Double whammy.
A double whammy. We are reviewing Hamnet. Some of you may be saying, we're sick of you talking about this, Alex. You've mentioned Hamnet twice already on the podcast. I have, but Chris has finally gotten around to watching it as well.
Well, hopefully there'll be some new listeners, Alex. I'll be like, oh, why are these guys not talked about Hamnet yet? And then
exactly,
we're here
exactly.
them too.
Exactly. And then we are getting into the sequel to 28 Years Later. 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Only 6 months on from when we
6 months only? Wow.
Yeah, that's why I had to look back through the episodes, and the last time we spoke about 28 Years Later was 6 months ago.
Oh, what a treat.
How have you been though, Chris?
I'm good. I've been being a little bit better already. I've been front loading my January with more movies. For one reason or another that I will not disclose. I'll get myself in trouble. But I've had some good free time to catch up on some stuff, and and it's a bit of a treat to kind of come into the new year, go see a big movie like Hamnet, go see something like 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. Getting into the award season, we're starting to get these big movies, and like every cinema trip is like, ooh, this could potentially be an exciting thing that kind of becomes a new sort of favorite film of mine. So having that potential on the horizon's been really cool. But apart from that, I'm pretty steady Eddie.
Yeah.
How about you?
No, I feel the same way. I think January is a great month, maybe more so for the UK, because we get a lot of the big kind of Oscar contenders which have released in the latter half of the year for America.
Yeah.
We tend to get a lot of them in the January, February months running up to the Oscars, so we get some really good cinema trips. Whereas I know in the States, they see January as a bit of a, like, just chuck something out month, and they get a few like shitter films. But for us, we get the big ones.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a shame. It's like a bit of a double-edged sword, because I remember 2 years ago now, whenever The Holdovers came out, obviously that was like a November, December release in the US. I forget which month that was, but it was a January release in here, and it's overtly a Christmas movie. And, it's such a shame to experience that film that way. But, like you said, it means that January can be, yes, cinematically for us, it's a lot of fun, but it can be a very dry, a bit of a dull month for a lot of people out there. So I think we are lucky that we get to have these little midweek trips from like, oh, it's Wednesday night, it's hump day and work. Well, you know what? I don't need 10 hours, 8 hours sleep. Let's go to the cinema and pay for it tomorrow. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been nice. No doubt. Which means that we obviously got the release of Hamnet finally. I got to see it on the festival run.
Alex was shaking the whole way to the cinema, knowing that I had already seen it and hadn't texted him back yet, even though I promised that I would text you back.
I know. I was on tender hooks as I went and took myself to see it again. But well, should we get into that? Should we get into our review of Hamnet? Should we jump straight in?
Let me paint the picture, because you already know already, Alex, but I'm sure people out there. So Hamnet tells the story of Agnes and William Shakespeare. I say Agnes first because to me she is the most dominant main character in the story.
It is her movie, I would say. Yeah.
I would argue as well. The story follows them through the years as they fall in love. They have 3 children, and Agnes is very much in touch with nature on a spiritual level, and William wants to expand his artistic horizons as a playwright in London. Obviously, it's William Shakespeare. So there's this big push and pull on financial and emotional needs between the two people, who really need deeply, really deeply love each other and their children. And unfortunately, tragedy befalls the family while William is away from the family home, leaving only Agnes to bear the brunt of that tragedy. So it becomes a film about emotional reconciliation between two people grieving in their own different ways. So yeah, pretty lighthearted stuff all around from Chloe Zhao as usual, huh, Alex?
Yeah, yeah, it is a pretty heavy film. It's a pretty heavy film, and taking myself to see this again in the cinema, I was quite excited to see it again. I put it as my number one film
That
of last
intrigued me.
year.
After watching the
I
film, that
know.
intrigued me. Yeah.
Excited is weird, right? I
Yeah.
think I just wanted to see it on the big screen because it has such an emotional impact on me. But I did get to about the halfway point and thought, why am I doing this to myself? Like, why am I doing this to myself again? But it does build towards a very kind of cathartic human release at the end
Yep.
of the film. And that is kind of what in the first screening you don't know you're going to get it. But in the second one, I'm kind of like, please just get me back to that point. I need to be healed again.
Mm.
So yeah, but for me, it worked just as well a second time. But I have hyped up this film. There has been a lot of hype for this film going into it, although it is now starting to have some detractors. I will say, it
Which is
is.
typical of anything that is, you know, pitched to be doing quite well in award season.
Mm.
It's kind of it's comes with the territory.
Well, I know you like the Blank Check podcast,
Big
and
fan, yeah.
they've had a series called like Critical Darlings on that podcast at the
Yeah,
moment.
I'm caught up with that as well.
Are you? So,
Yeah.
have you listened to the Hamnet episode where they paint it potentially
Oh,
as the Oscar villain?
I have no, sorry, I've listened to the Marty Supreme one, but not
Gotcha.
the Hamnet is one yet. Is that one? Oh, I must have missed it. Okay. Yeah, I
I
missed that one.
Yeah, that one, they are not as upbeat on Hamnet, and they even
Interesting.
though they don't see it as an Oscar villain, but apparently the narrative at the moment is like this is the one that people don't want to see win because it presents itself as too much typical Oscar bait.
There's a even though Chloe Zhao isn't, I wouldn't call her a traditional filmmaker, there are traditional trappings just because of the setting.
Shakespeare.
Um, yeah, I mean, anything that's period and, like, put on an awards pedestal, it's just part of the territory, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, we'll see. It seems to have a lot of traction at the minute, especially from the acting front, which,
Well, yeah, it seems Jessie Buckley is pretty much kind of a shoe in for best actress, and I am very happy about that. I think
yeah.
her performance in this film is something else, and the way, as you say, when tragedy befalls and you have to watch her go through the grieving process, I don't know where she is bringing some of that emotion from, but it
Mm,
looks painful and horrible and really difficult to watch. And the film is very good. Well, I say it's very good, but it does this thing in those difficult scenes where you almost just want them to cut away. Like, please, I can't watch any more of this. Stop
it's
putting me through
prolonged.
this.
Yeah.
But I think they do it for a reason. And again, I'm always going to keep going back. It's to elevate that ending,
Mm.
to make you feel like you've gone through something. But Chris,
Well,
you talk to me more. Did you feel emotionally manipulated by it?
I guess we'll kind of find out about that. I'm interested. You said you were excited to revisit it, and I kind of do understand like the word excited in a way
Maybe
because
maybe I should change the word to
it's one of these things. I think
intrigued.
anytime you go to the cinema, and it's a very rare thing, I think it happens once, twice, if you're lucky, 3 times a year, where a film is successful enough to solicit a really, a really big emotional reaction, like it did for you. And it's almost this sort of thing where you are excited to return to it, or almost nervous to return to it,
Mm.
just to like almost in self-preservation for like, was that moment authentic? Was I warranted to feel that way in that moment, or was I just really vulnerable? So, there's a lot of respect to give to somebody to return to a film and there's a lot of stake for you emotionally just to be like, "Oh, was I right or was I wrong?" And I'm so glad for you that you were right, in that occasion because it does take a lot. And it's like reasons why I haven't rewatched something like After Sun, those sort of movies
Mm,
that are
yeah.
very raw to the bone where it's just like, oh, I I don't want to feel the pain again,
Yeah.
and one I don't want to be wrong. I want to keep the sanctity of that original experience pure, and like there's something about
Yeah. I think
that.
I forgot just how painful that middle section is,
Mm.
and it is painful. That is the bit. So first time I watched it, yeah, I definitely cried at that part, and I definitely cried at the end. But this time around, I only cried at the middle again. uh, but
Yeah, the middle, God. Well,
and
let's just
we had
say,
a walkout as well in our cinema during that section, which is fair. I mean, if you don't know what you're getting into, and that
and you
touches on
interpreted
something.
that as them experiencing the film being hard, in terms of their emotional response, or did they just not like the movie?
I mean, obviously it could have been either, but when you're leaving during one of the most difficult scenes, it does make you wonder whether somebody's just been like, "I'm checking out. Like
It's not
this
the sort of
isn't."
film I think you'd walk out on if you didn't enjoy it. I don't think it's that.
Mm,
I don't think you're getting what you didn't sign up for in this film. I don't think it's like
mm,
gonna upset anybody in that reason. I think it's definitely in the vein of what it's presented to be. So right, okay, how I felt about the film. I like the film a lot. Um, a lot of people love this film, and there's also the other camp of people, like you said, very recently have given it a bit of backlash. I think there's a mixture of taste there, and also with the award season being treated on the way, I just think people are starting to get really passionate, as we said before. But I'm not going to
mhm.
sit here and tell everyone that I didn't cry because I did. Um, there are some moments that really well test some audience members, like especially anyone who may have experienced this type of grief before. I have not. So if I cried, then I think most folks will probably might need to consider that before they go to see Hamnet. And maybe that
We
person who
are
walked out.
we are
Yeah.
easy criers, though. It is worth
I
saying.
am an easy crier, and, like, it makes it worse because I don't know if it's just something like I grew up in that sort of environment where I wasn't really, like, I didn't feel, like, comfortable to cry a lot and those sort of
Mhm.
things. So I do that thing where, like, I try to suppress the tears whilst I'm
Mm.
doing it,
Yeah.
and then the bottom lip starts to go, and it's this, like, single tear that I have to leave on my face for about 5 minutes and then nonchalantly dry as if it's not related to the
Yeah,
scene.
yeah.
Yeah.
Just itching my cheek, itching my cheek.
Yeah, it's inherent problems of being a man and, like, and trying to not be, a man in the traditional sense and trying to wrestle with all those things that are ingrained to us at an early age. But yeah, no, it's super emotional. Listeners might already be aware that you're very much infatuated with the film, and
Mhm.
now this being a second watch, watching it in the multiplex instead of the festival circuit, is that like did did that kind of come into play for you? Like, did you feel the setting was a big contribution, to, like, sharing the film with a lot of like-minded individuals? Um, Maybe got the tears out in the last scene more than, like, this time around?
Yeah, I think as well. Like, I think the last scene, I just wasn't expecting where it was going in that first instance. But you're right. The difference in screenings was I was in the Prince Charles Cinema in London, in a cinema that was full to the brim of people who, like you say, all like-minded and all watching this film for the first time. And as the lights go down at the end, we clap and you can hear people sobbing in the background. Whereas my kind of experience with the multiplex is, I'm in a relatively empty cinema, unfortunately, with a couple of other people. One person's already left. There's a light blue line across the top half of the screen, which is a little bit annoying because the
Oh,
projection's a bit
that is
shit.
annoying.
And I definitely realized as well, like the film, like the projection was just slightly darker. I was like, I remember this film not being as dark in some of
Is
the
that
darker
is
scenes.
it that same cinema? I feel like I've heard you say this a few times and for a few different films.
I feel like there's a few places. All right, so every cinema in Bristol probably has the odd screen which has its dodgy things. I'm starting to write them down now, and I'm also starting to like message the cinema, so I'm not just like moaning about it and not doing anything about it. So I do say screen two, faint blue
Yeah.
line across the top. If anybody cares, they might not care. Um,
CG7. Yeah.
yeah, so I don't know, but it is just one of the things of like seeing something at a multiplex, which is very much like how many films can we churn out, how many buckets of popcorn can we sell at the same time. We are getting an Odeon opening soon in Bristol, which is going to have an IMAX screen, so very excited to see what
It's
that's
about
like.
time. That city needs an IMAX. Sure.
So, But yeah, no, I mean, obviously, it was a very different experience.
Hmm.
But I got to watch it with producer Emma, so I was very happy.
And
As
she enjoyed it as well, did
she
she?
enjoyed it. She enjoyed it. It's not really her type of film. Like I don't think she would actively seek this type of
Hmm.
film out. So for her, she was like, I can appreciate it, but I didn't like love it. But yeah, for me, I was just I kind of it was like what I remember it being, and I could watch it maybe with a slightly more critical eye on the second
Yeah.
time round and understand that like there are a few elements which don't work as well. But I think as an overall piece of film, I think for me, everything's working emotionally, and I
Hmm.
think that's what Chloe Zhao's really good is kind of like stripping a film back down to like the humanity and taking you through kind of that emotions that all humans kind of go through at some point within our lives, and just kind of like really being able to take you through the full spectrum of that within like a 2 hour time frame. I forgot this was only a 2 hour film. I feel like it
Yeah.
accomplishes so much in that time,
It
and
does
I
go
just
fast. I felt like even though the pacing's deliberate, didn't feel that this was a slow film watching it.
No, I definitely don't as well. And yeah, I think I just really connect with Chloe Zhao's kind of way of thinking
Mm.
and her style of filmmaking. It all just really works for me. I think she gets some really incredible performances out of the characters here. And I think even though maybe more different than any of her previous films, I appreciate some people might also think Eternals is a lot more different to like Nomadland and stuff like that.
My
But
blind spot is the one I need to see.
they all share similarities, and I think she's a really interesting director for that reason. I think she can show that she can make different types of films, but they all kind of come back to that central thing, and that central thing for me, or at least how I read it, is kind of like humanity and nature and the world around us, and how intertwined it is. So that really works for me, and I do love how much this film presents nature as something a bit more mystical. Like Agnes is very much connected to nature. The rumor is she was born in that tree trunk or something like that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So, yeah,
The
it's
opening shot of the film is the tree, and it goes down to her, and she's in the fetal position. Yeah.
yeah, and nature
Yeah.
plays like almost like an omen at many points during the film. I'm thinking of like the flooding and the bees and stuff like that. It plays a very big part, and I feel like whenever there has been a big kind of tense or horrific scene, the moment of release is almost like silence and then just the sound of trees swaying and wind and stuff like that.
Mm.
Like that really works for me. It always kind of brings you back down to nature. And it feels like a very grounded film despite the fact that you're playing with historical fiction and you are playing with a little bit of like mysticism as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
which was something like I should have expected that from Chloe Zhao film, because she is. You're right. She's nature and she's humanist as well at the
Mm.
same time with pretty much all of her films. So yeah, no, it was really interesting, and I think that was one of the more interesting elements of the film. I guess do we put spoilers on now for this as
Yeah,
we
should we start talking spoilers? Let's do it. So from here on out, guys, spoiler
Spoiler
alert.
alert. Spoiler alert. Okay, I love the first act of this film. Probably the most, and it's worth
Mhm.
saying that I think she does a really good job at storyboarding the periods of time in this couple's life. Where we have Act One, we getting to know their backgrounds as they fall in love. Agnes is like one with nature and the forest, and any time spent with her character alone in the woods is the stuff that I think Zhao has a really good eye for. And
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
Will, being like a frustrated artist, is a small town in a small town with parents who are capital R realists. It's ice and fire colliding when they meet, and it's something deeply romantically passionate about them coming together. And I think that what brings them together is that they are both very unconventional human beings, and in a time where being unconventional was frowned upon. And I thought that really worked with me, and I worked for me, and I think that's really interesting. I love the scenes between Jesse Buckley and Emily Watson, who's Emily Watson plays Shakespeare's mother, and who's somebody who's very much in the rhythm of life that she's been in a traditional marriage and a traditional family, keeping face, keeping appearance, being a mother, lost children, but has had to have a get up and go attitude her entire life. Get up and get on with it sort of thing. And it's
Yep.
hardened her.
No
And
time for emotions.
no time for emotions. And I really love the scenes. I think the film does a really good job at like smoothing her down to Agnes through the film, through seeing her in the way that her son sees her, and not just this like weird hippie in the forest who is like one with nature and very ethereal and like that's just her thing, but sees it as somebody who isn't tethered by the trappings that everybody else is, and
Yeah.
seeing liberation through her, and
Mhm.
seeing somebody who is actually living an authentic life, which doesn't seem to be something that everybody else in the town is doing.
Yeah.
So
She
I
sticks to her convictions, doesn't she?
she
Or
sticks
her
to her
principles.
convictions. And regardless of what other people think about her in a moment, she's not going to like back herself down
Yeah.
to appease anybody. And I think she finds that secretly admirable, or not so secretly later on. Um, yeah, so Act One's really cool, really strong, and that's where I think about all these like earthy green tones for the film. I
Mm.
love the forest in this movie. Act Two is very interesting to me, and this is where like obviously the real meat of the film and most of the tears will be spilled.
Yeah.
And this is carried by Jessie Buckley.
Yeah.
Really, this is her part of the film where she
Yeah.
really like this is her where her Oscar is going to come from, maybe. And I think it's just incredible in everything that I've seen from her. Going back to the movie Beast and Wild Rose, which I need to get you to see. Wild Rose is
I know, it's on my
so good.
list. I will
I
watch
know.
I'm gonna watch it very soon, I think.
Cool. It's just a really exciting career to witness, and seeing her just continue to knock out great performances is
Mm.
just really cool. And but yeah, she does a lot of crying in this chunk of the film, and
Yeah,
for
yeah.
good reason
Which
because
I
seeing
guess is maybe why some people are turned off by it, or not turned off by it, but like see it as like Oscar bait, is because those big emotional scenes in the past have been the ones that have gotten people like best actor, best actress, because it's like, here's me displaying like a really set, like it's either crying or shouting seems to be the thing, right? That's the Oscar clip. And that is what her Oscar clip will be, is,
yeah.
those scenes. But like, I don't know, there's something so real about this one.
Yeah, it's not
It's
Anne
not
Hathaway
showy.
singing "I Dream a Dream." No,
It's
it's not that.
funny
And
you mention Anne Hathaway.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it
because
just
she is
it
Anne Hathaway.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I find that stuff really interesting in this film too, like the sort of going back to sort of Tudor-esque period of England, just interchangeable names like, and yes, she was referred to sometimes historically, but Anne Hathaway is how history kind of knows her.
Mm.
Um, this film takes a lot of liberty because there's a lot about Shakespeare's life that we just famously don't know about.
We barely know anything, right?
We barely know anything. Like, there's debates about his sexuality, about her, and I don't think there's much written about her in general, to be
No.
honest.
Whether he was, like, multiple people as well, right? It wasn't.
Yeah, there's a film. Do you remember that film that came out like 15 years ago that nobody saw, called Anonymous?
Oh,
Um,
yes. Yeah,
which
yeah. I
it
didn't
was a
see it.
theory that like somebody else, yeah, it was the had written the works and that it was compiled from
Yeah.
other places and that Shakespeare was more like a figure for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very interesting. But yeah, like it's hard not to cry when you see a child die on
Yeah,
screen
and can
in a traumatically visceral way and be trapped in a temporary purgatory. It's rough stuff. And you're so right. Like earlier on when you said it feels like it goes on forever.
mm,
Not in a way that's meant to torture, but in a way that's just like, I want you to experience this woman's world and suffering, and
yeah.
actually put you in the perspective of the child for a second too, because that's a rare
Yeah.
perspective also.
And I would like to just say it was kind of like something I couldn't talk about before because I think, well, I guess it doesn't spoil the film too much. But now that we're fully talking about spoilers, but Jacoby Jupe as Hamnet
Yeah.
is one of the most interesting child performances I've ever seen. Like, he is young here. I can't remember how old he's supposed to be. Is he supposed to be 10? Maybe less?
Yeah. It displayed a lot of emotional intelligence,
That's it. It's the
and
maturity on display because he's not just being fed lines. It feels like he fully understands what he's doing. So it's
Mm,
saying the lines, showing the emotion, and understanding it. So in the scene where he's swapping places with his sister, he sees death in the corner of the room. He's
yeah.
talking about, he's using the words "I will be brave" from the conversation he's had with his father, and it is and like all of that feels incredibly emotionally mature. And you're just
Yeah.
like, this kid, and he sells it. You don't feel like you're watching a kid just say lines,
It
which
could be
sometimes it feels like.
Yeah, because that could be a very precocious performance, but I think the emotional intelligence is warranted because of who his parents are, and we have enough time spent with them and the home life and the education, and not just academically, but
Mm,
emotional, like, Agnes is giving him, like, the you know, the forest, the nature of the forest, and the education behind that, and listening and being more in tune emotionally. And then obviously Paul Mescal's character of Will Shakespeare is a bit more obviously on the academic and literature side. So
yeah.
do get a sense of their home life, and that like I get why a kid would be a few years above everybody else.
Mm.
So yeah, because that is a hard one to sell.
And
But
and
that's a
and
great performance. Yeah.
the film itself presents itself as like, a slightly heightened like theatrical dialogue as well. Like it presents a world that is, slightly like it feels grounded, but at the same time is heightened. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I don't know.
I feel like, yeah, even the sets, there's a
Mm,
minimalism. I don't know if that's an
mm,
economic reasons to do production, but there is a definitely like a subtlety with sets. The interiors, they feel like authentic. Like I look, there's a lot of shots of the kids' bedroom,
mm,
the twins' bedroom, and there's just like a couple of little things on the shelf. There's a couple of little items that like would have meant a lot to a person, and I feel like
uh,
that's I think that's authentic to the time period where they just kind
uh,
of live in a period where we have not much, but, like, what we do, we get by, and the things that we do have, we treasure, and, like, and that's just kind of not talked about, but it's in the production design. I
yeah.
really like that. And it's not a
Is
big
it,
lavish, like, Guillermo del Toro film where we're gonna see London and see all filled CGI form, and we're gonna, like, it's not what the movie's about.
the film wants to be grounded, but at the same time wants you to believe that nature is this like
Mm,
heightened magical thing, and that when Anya says she has visions of her on her deathbed with two people by her side, and like you're like, yeah, that feels real. That feels like a real premonition. Like all of it, like the slightly heightened mystical element kind of works with the very grounded and dirty and realism of the world. Like it just presents itself in this way, and I was like, yeah, this is the world, and I like it.
I think it also wants to, like, you to be amazed by the globe whenever you see it at the end, you know? Because like, we don't see a lot of
Something big,
London. Like,
yeah.
yeah, what we see of London is usually darkly lit and, like, distorted, and, like, it's more just, like, following Will as he walks down the streets.
Mm.
Um, and then whenever we get the globe, it's like this big monolithic thing. It's like it's almost like it's the only building in London whenever you're watching it at that
Yeah.
part.
Can
So this
I
brings
ask you
yeah,
then? So obviously, I'm somebody who doesn't like. I don't love Shakespeare. I think like I had to learn a lot of it, and I've studied it somewhat, and it's not for me fully.
yeah.
Even if that makes me sound like a dum dum. Um, so I couldn't fully remember what Hamlet was about. I knew it was like a Danish prince, and there's a lot of stabbings. But then a lot of Shakespeare stuff has a lot of stabbings in it. So,
Yeah.
but for me, I feel like not remembering the Shakespeare stuff and the Shakespeare lore probably worked in my favor because like that stuff doesn't come off as, um, you know, definitely the film is probably forcing itself to fit Hamlet as
Yeah,
part of
like,
this world.
this
Like, but
there's,
for
like,
you
certain
are a bigger
there's certain
fan.
I'm not like I'm a very big Macbeth fan. I'm a
Ah,
very big
gotcha.
Macbeth fan, and, like, no, I there's some, ones that we did A-level literature in school, and, like, there was some our teacher was very into Shakespeare, so there were some
Mm,
niche ones, like, there was a play we did called Measure for Measure, which was, like, it was all about political a lot of his plays are about political backstabbing and
mm.
people being very overt, and I do really like it, and I really like seeing Shakespeare ripple. It's like when people talk about the Beatles, and I think you're in that camp too. And people are, like, uh, I just I like it, but I don't see it. I really do enjoy seeing reflections of Shakespeare through modern day, and I think half of the movies that we enjoy or even talk about in the podcast, probably it's like the butterfly effect to the nth degree. I don't think half of what we talk about in our daily lives probably would have existed without Shakespeare. So I enjoy it, and I find Shakespeare obviously is overly flowery language, but it's very fun to parse and to separate and try to find meaning in those sentences, and I really do enjoy just, like, the puzzle of that at times.
Mhm.
And Macbeth is just such a cool, dark play, and ever since I watched the I don't know if it's great to say nowadays, but I love the Polanski movie back in the 70s. Um, and that really captured me at a young age. And I was like, this is so unusual and strange, but like feels very contemporary. It's like this is written in Tudor times. Hamlet, like I more know about Hamlet free pop culture than actually experiencing watching this. So I'm not actually
Sure.
that far from you. Although the scenes that I saw in the play in the third act of Hamnet were scenes that I think most people kind of know. Um, kind of just free hearing to free pop culture, right? Like especially the big one, to be or not to be. And that was a big choice for them to have to say for Paul
Yeah.
Mescal to have to say that
That
on the edge of a jetty.
that for me is like where, as somebody who I'm aware of the to be or not to be, that scene feels a little bit maybe like naff, maybe.
Hmm.
I can see why some people would bump up against that
I
because
think he
that
does a
feels very
good
much like
job.
the biopic kind of film that comes in. How did Han Solo get his name? How did he get his gun? Like that kind of stuff where it's like rolling your eyes. You're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah, it didn't come out of a moment like that. I love the moment when he goes through the lines with some of his like I don't
Mm,
know they're doing an audition or they're doing a rehearsal, but it's just a close up of him pacing and
yeah.
just correcting his students or actors or whatever, and
Mm,
that's a really good scene. Um, Act 3, I'm pretty much saying all positive things up to this point, I think, but Act
yeah.
3 is even a week later is still really confusing me and making me question my experience of the film. Because I was very much in the pocket the whole journey of this film was taking me on. And I was sort of anticipating the emotional catharsis of the film that is really striving for when Agnes like goes to see the play Hamlet in the Globe.
Uh-huh,
And I
uh-huh.
feel like I felt a little bit colder than I did in the film because it was, by the time this felt like this felt like the traditional part that where people maybe might be a bit more upset about. They might think it's an Oscar-winning movie, and this kind of feels like the part of the film that feels like that. Its emotions feel a little bit strained and contrived to me. Yeah, with Agnes coming into the theater and she's being shushed by everyone multiple times, and she's confused about what they're saying,
Because
why
she's
they're
never
saying
seen a play before.
but her I guess, yeah, her husband's William Shakespeare. I don't know how far he is in his career at this point, but,
You feel like she would have somewhat of a
of an insight, but I guess it was sort of more played to be that she was more confused that, like, it was about her son.
yes,
So
somewhat.
playing the only sections of the play that, like, can sort of be twisted to fit the narrative of the film that we're watching, it did even if you didn't know Hamlet, it felt like that anyway.
Yeah,
The hands coming out, this is why I was confused because this film had already made me cry before. I was in the pocket for it, and I almost gaslit myself into believing, I was moved by the end because as I got home, I kind of thought about it and I really rested on that confusion for a few days. I think I came to the honest conclusion, Alex, that if it's that, if that's how I'm wrestling with that confusion, then maybe something's like not quite right with me or here. Like
yeah.
it obviously that mid gut of the film sucker punched me as it did you and many other people. But maybe I can see some of the Oscar-y complaints about the third act that felt a little bit like, "Ooh, the strings are going. We're elevating this as much as we can," and,
Mm.
like, I just don't know if I got over the threshold by the end of it. I don't know.
But do you not think the film, like, just ties the whole kind of story of grief together?
It does, like, it
Because Agnes doesn't believe that Shakespeare is feeling the same kind of feelings or has been affected as much as by this as
it's her
she
seeing
has.
her husband for the first time since the death, 100%.
Yeah, and obviously understanding that he does understand what's going on, but he's grieving in a very different way. But in doing so, he's created this beautiful piece of art which has connected everybody. And although they may not be looking at Hamlet and thinking of her son, but like he represents her son, and everybody is there feeling the same way in that moment. And I think that makes him live on. And I think
Well
that's why it works. I think that's why it works. I think there's this. when when they do the hands reaching out, really powerful. But then she looks around at everybody, and everybody is crying, and he has been able to take real life emotion and be able to like share it with an audience. And I think that for me is where I was like, oh, art. This is why we go to the cinema.
Like, what you're saying is completely right, and I think that's I think that's the intention of Zhao. I think, like, that's completely what the film is going for. I just don't I think it's more of the presentation of it. I think it's more just how it was displayed cinematically that felt like we were raising the tempo in a different sort of taste here, and,
Mm.
and I don't know, like, I guess the hands thing does work, but it felt a little bit like I don't know, like, if I'm transported back 500, 600 years ago, to the globe, am I likely to see that scenario happen? Probably not, and I hate the way I'm thinking about technicalities and something that from a filmmaker that's quite ethereal and quite,
Mm.
wants you to kind of, like, let those things go a little bit, but I couldn't help but think about it, and I was kind of forcing myself to not think about that, I really was fighting those instincts to find it
Which
against
is
my
interesting
taste.
because the rest of the film doesn't present itself as a full realism take on this story. So
No, but
why in
there's
this segment are you brushing up against it, I guess?
I think because everybody else apart from Agnes and her family are pretty
Mm.
cold in the movie. I
Mm.
think most people are very, like, cold, and just to see everybody kind of not, give this sort of like Titanic ending of like everybody's welcoming this moment. It's not on that level, but like that's the best comparison I could pull from my stupid head. It was it just felt that it just felt forced to me.
Okay.
And I don't know. And I said and like I wasn't going rolling my eyes. In the moment I was sitting there going like, yeah, yeah, nodding my head, yeah.
Woo!
And then I was going driving, woo! Yip! Pod racing. This is pod racing.
Yippee!
Um, but then I was sort of just thinking about it over the days. I'm like, I think I was forcing myself to kind of think that that really worked for me.
Fair enough.
And that's really hard for me to do because I wanted to protect the sanctity of my feelings for the gut middle part of the film,
Mhm,
which were really
mhm.
raw. I don't know, something just changed there. And I can't put my finger on it, but it's still something coming into today's podcast that I'm kind of wrestling with.
That's fair.
Um, and I think like, gut reaction when it comes to film is a really important thing. And I'll have to watch the film to kind of really introspect to why it didn't
Mm.
quite work for me. But it seems that people are split on that section of the film as opposed to any other part of the film. If it
Yeah.
is going to be a point of contention for anybody,
Yes. Yes.
I'm glad it worked for you. I'm really glad it
Yeah,
worked for
I
you.
must say I thought you might have been similar to me, just knowing the type of films that we both enjoy. Um, so there was, like, a tad bit of surprise that you didn't think this was perfect like me.
Are you saying perfect like your interpretation of the film or perfect like you as a person? Like you're
Both.
perfect. Okay. Yeah.
No, I'm kidding.
I
I'm
am
kidding, no.
saying, Alex, that you as a person are better than Hamnet. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's, yeah,
Like I
no,
still really like the movie.
yeah, I like a film that takes you on a bit of an emotional experience. It doesn't have to be crying, but I just feel like there was a lot more to this film than just the sad emotion. I just like I truly felt like I'd been through something in a good way, but come out the other end and like to be able to fit that into 2 hours was just
Hmm.
crazy. I just honestly, it worked its magic on me. That yeah, the film works for me. I can understand people's criticisms of it. I can understand that you are kind of really forcing Hamlet to work in this scenario. But like I don't know. The film for me doesn't need to be you know law friendly or whatever. It doesn't need to
But
be.
there's no really lore to be friendly to, I suppose.
No, it doesn't feel like, Wicked hammering in the Wizard of Oz to fit into the
Yeah.
narrative. Like for me, this is more of an allegory, and more of a way to just be like, I want to say something about the human experience, and I want to say something about art and how the two work together, and I'm gonna kind of use this, loose story about Shakespeare and his wife and his child to kind of present those
Mhm.
emotions and that way of going through it. So for me, it all works, and that's why it was my number one film last year. But listen to you speak, Chris. Would you? I assume this wouldn't have been your number one film last year, but do you think it would have made your top 10 if you were to redo it right now?
I don't know. I think it's cresting it.
Mm.
I'm still like not completely like I've settled and put Hamnet to bed yet
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
he's dead. Sorry. Um, um, yeah, I haven't really sort of settled the film down, and it's kind of annoyingly rattled where I am. Like I don't know where I
Mm.
even at with a star rating. I'm like a 3.5 or a 4. I'm sort of like there. A lot of it
Mhm.
really worked for me, but it just sucks whenever, like, for some inexplicable reason, the last 15 minutes of a movie you
Mm.
otherwise really enjoyed just sort of just doesn't tick with you. And that's yeah. I'll get back to you on that one.
Yeah, no worries, no worries. Well, I don't, I'd say I'd watch it again, but I think twice is enough now. I got to put twice in the last 6 months. Might even be less than that.
It is an odd movie to buy physical. It would be really odd if you were just to go specifically to HMV and buy Hamnet and bring it home for the
Yeah, I
family.
know. But I think the thing is, I love buying the films that I enjoy the most each year. So,
It's
like,
a
part of me
little like yeah.
would maybe buy Hamnet, but I don't know whether I'd watch it this year or next year now because I've seen it a lot. Like, I'm not sure I'm gonna sit down and watch it again in the next few months.
Well, it might
Um,
be a best picture winner, who knows? And then like,
Potentially.
we always like to revisit those movies. It's
I
always
don't th
very interesting. You don't think so?
I don't think it'll win Best Picture as much
Yeah.
as I, would love it to. But obviously, I'm sure we'll have an Oscar episode coming up in the future where we can discuss
Dissect
more of
that.
those things. But I do think Jessie Buckley will win Best Actress, and that is absolutely fine by me.
I'm rooting for her. Yeah.
I'm rooting for her too. I'm rooting for her too. Paul Mescal's taking a step back apparently now. He's not going to act for another year or so. I think he said he was just wanted to take a break.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard
It's
that
a
a while
shame.
back
He's
too.
great in this, and I kind of want to keep seeing more of him. I like him in these kind of like medium big films. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I don't think he like. I appreciate Gladiator 2 maybe wasn't the best vehicle for him, but I think he works better in these kind of films than he does in a big blockbuster film.
I understand where I don't know, like, I can't really know where a person I don't know is at in terms of their headspace, but, like, I
But he's from
suppose
Ireland, Chris. You know everybody.
yeah, exactly, it's small world, but they're all in America now anyway, aren't they? They're all scattered everywhere. Um, the thing is, I think I do like him also, you're right, in these sort of medium, small roles, but they have kind of, like they are of a piece, like, they are sad roles generally. He's
Sad
very
boy.
good, which he's so good at that, and I suppose maybe he's sort of looking at the perspective of, I don't maybe wanna get pigeonholed as this sort of guy too, but I also don't want to get lost in the he's in a strange little spot at the minute, um, as a where the future of his career is gonna be.
Yeah.
So I kind of understand that in a way.
He
Um,
doesn't want to be sad boy forever, I guess.
no, because even if you do something perfectly and you're really amazing at it, people like after 3 or 4 times, people get sick of it. It's just like
Right.
people are very cannibalistic that way. And I think he's smart enough to kind of realize that.
Mhm.
Um, too. Yeah, it happens all the especially happens with female actors. They happens all the time. Um, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I want to continue seeing him in movies forever. So yeah,
Yeah,
he's amazing.
he's very good. I do like him.
All right,
Sh
completely different tone now, Alex.
Yeah, shall we get into our review of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple? 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple is the sequel to 28 Years Later, the film that came out last year, directed by Danny Boyle, which was the sequel reboot to the original series, which was 28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later. This one, though, feels like more of a contained story. So this feels like the
Mhm.
middle chapter, and potentially what they're hoping to be is a kind of three-part 28 Years Later story. So our main character, Spike, has found himself in the hands of a pretty nasty group called the Jimmies, which are all dressed in very colorful tracksuits and very
Evoking a
reminiscent.
certain individual.
Yes, evoking the looks of Jimmy Savile, who, in this kind of world of the UK when the rage virus took over, revelations about him becoming or being a pedophile would not have been uh, would not have been in the public conscious, in the public psyche at this time. They're also quite reminiscent of the Teletubbies as well,
Yeah.
which plays a part later in the film. So yeah, Spike has now got to he kind of through a bout of luck is ingrained into this group, and he's got to survive whilst also bearing witness to the awful things that this group get up to. And then we also have a second half of the story where we have Dr. Is it Kelson? That's it,
Dr.
Kelson.
Ian Kelson, yeah.
Dr. Kelson, who we knew from last film, played by Rafe Fiennes, and his own kind of seclusion within this bone temple that he has created, which is less of a scary, crazy place and more of a memorial to the dead,
Yeah.
and how he deals with that, and how he has to deal with the local alpha Samson, and their kind of unique relationship that comes about in this film. But we'll keep it
Mm,
spoiler free for a minute, and we'll go from there. But yeah, I mean, these films were shot relatively back to back, but you had Danny Boyle directing the first one, and then American director Near DaCosta coming in
mm,
to film the second part. And it's, I would say, very interesting because it tonally and formally quite different. So clearly, both directors were allowed to kind of take that script and do what they wanted with it. So you do get something that is slightly different to the first film.
mm.
Um, but yeah, thoughts, Chris?
I do like the way the 28 franchise is not like slavishly devoted to a style
Mm,
that like
mm.
every single film, even like Boyle's two films, they all have a distinct different flavor, but manage to become of a piece. I think 28 Weeks is probably the only one that's like an outlier for me, which
Mhm,
is like
mhm.
that's just like a straight up action film with dread. Um, but, like, it's always been a franchise that wants to talk about bigger things apart from that movie.
Yeah.
I guess let's just do, like, a quick temperature check on where you are with the franchise as well, Alex, in the grand canon of zombie films. Is the 28 franchise up there for you? Are you high on the franchise as a whole, or there been any duds?
I'm a fan. I'm a fan. I guess the only one that kind of, I can still enjoy it, but it's not my favorite, is 28 Weeks Later.
Yeah.
But I think we
It's a
we both
teenage boy's favorite of the bunch,
it
I think, right?
is the
And I think
most
that's what
kind
we
of,
were.
yeah, it's the most, straightforward of these films. But yeah, I must say, I think we both had 28 Years Later in our top 5 last year, didn't we? Of our favorite films of the
It
year.
was number 2 for me.
Number
Yeah.
2 for you, and I think number 3 for myself.
Mm.
So I mean, and I was excited for 28 Years Later, but I wasn't expecting that film to blow me away in quite the way it did. And yeah, which meant there was a lot more kind of anticipation, excitement, hype going into the Bone Temple itself and seeing how this story continues, because I think 28 Years Later set up some really interesting characters and some really interesting kind of like critiques of modern day Britain, and
Yeah.
a lot of pathos that I wasn't expecting from a zombie film. And we've seen a lot of zombie stuff in the last decade since 28 Years Later, so
2010
2 decades.
2010s was riddled with it.
Exactly. So, what can this franchise do with zombies? And once again, I think the Bone Temple, for the most part, does s- push the boat out on what you expect from these films. So yeah, I am a fan of 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, though I will say this: I did not think it was nearly as good as 28 Years Later from last year. I was missing some of the elements that Danny Boyle brought to it. This for me is a film of two halves, really. You have the Kelson story and you have the Jimmy story.
Yeah.
And the Kelson story for me is truly pushing the boat out, really thinking about like how we look at zombies, the nature of zombies, and really kind of like going further into that than I've ever seen before, and pushing the boat out, doing some really interesting things. Ray Fiennes is incredible. He plays pretty much a main role in this film, and I think he does some really interesting things. Then you switch over to the other half of the film, which is the Jimmies, and obviously these do cross over at some point. But for me, the Jimmy stuff is kind of stuff I've seen before in zombie films. Like Jack O'Connell is very good as your main
Mm.
Jimmy, but I think every zombie franchise show film has a moment where the most evil person in the world is running a group of survivors and they do really horrible, terrible things. And it is kind of like one of those things where it's like, it's fun to watch them do evil things. At the same time, you're hiding behind your hands because you can't believe what you're seeing at the same time, and it gets to play with the gore and all that kind of stuff that you would expect from a kind of zombie horror film. But for me, it wasn't doing anything new there, and obviously you may say otherwise. But for me, I was just like, I've seen this before. I want to go back to Kelson, and I want to go back to the storyline that I'm like, I haven't seen this before, so this intrigues me more.
Hmm. I think that's really well put. I think you're right. I think this is definitely a middle chapter. So I
Mm,
think there is definitely less to chew on in terms of like you said, the temperature check of the first one was the British Society, the frozen time in the early
mm,
2000s, and this one I feel explores the festering scar tissue of that society.
mhm,
And I represented by a cult of sadists led by Jack O'Connell,
mm.
as Sir Jimmy Crystal and his group of Jimmies, but they're referenced as his fingers in this.
Yes,
Um,
they are
so
Satanists and
they are
they worship
Satanists.
Old Nick.
Yes, old Nick. Yeah, juxtaposed with Dr. Kelson, and you're right, like Ralph Fiennes, I think giving like why would you say Ralph Fiennes giving one of his best performances? Because every time I see a movie with him, I'm like, oh my goodness, he's like one of the greatest actors living or ever lived, to be honest. I think he's incredible, incredible in this movie. And
Mm,
you're right, it's a split narrative where we'll spend some time with the Jimmies, some time with Dr. Kelson and Samson, and then before ultimately like their worlds collide in the end. And what I love about that, Alex, is that both of these films now have been really exciting to view for the first time in the cinema because scene to scene, I feel like I have no idea where it is going to go.
should we just get into spoilers?
Yeah, let's go for it, man.
Let's
Yeah,
just because it's one of those films. It's difficult to talk about because if not, you're just kind of talking about the setup more than anything. And I
the
think
setup's already been done.
the
Yeah,
setup's been done, and I wouldn't want anybody to be spoiled on this film if they haven't seen it. So I think you do just have to go away and watch it. It is really interesting. I had a really good time with it, and I know you did as well, Chris. So obviously, I think I have a few like more quibbles with it, but
okay.
you know, but but like I said, for me it was a film with two halves. But yeah, let's get into spoilers. Let's go. Spoiler
Spoiler
alert.
alert! Spoiler alert! In Hollywood, these scripts would always be like these anomalies that you'd read about years later and say
Hmm.
to yourself, "Man, imagine if they made that movie." Like, imagine they made a movie where it ends up with Ralph Fiennes confronting and murdering Jimmy Savile cosplayer while dancing to Iron Maiden. It's like it's a real like treat to see. I think the movie moves like a bullet, honestly. I think it's so the pacing of it's an hour and 50 minutes, and the movie just disappeared from me. And I understand that you're like, I want to spend more time with Dr. Kelson and what he's doing, and that's really interesting stuff too.
Yeah.
This is like this is definitely like the least zombie movie of the bunch of them in terms of like amount of zombies, like in blood and guts and all that sort of stuff. It
Yeah, you
is
don't really get many like just regular zombies. Like there's a few, but
yeah. It's kind of like
they're not
exploring
scary.
28 Days Later was like the final act of that film was, humanity is the sort of like villain and all that sort of stuff. And that is this film as like as a theme going front. And I think it explores some really interesting things, Alex, about cult culture, in terms of like this he's sort of like a modern day Manson family, but like yeah,
Mm.
it's very interesting. And I think it does it in a subtle way. I love whenever we are gonna like sort of be shown Jimmy as being almost like this malevolent, hateful person, but it's the more we hear him talk to Dr. Kelson about his past, that final day of like when we saw at the beginning of the first 28 years later of him running to his dad in the church and his sisters being killed and his mother being killed, um, is like that person has been frozen time. and they're defined completely by that one day. It's like their childhood didn't exist before that day or after that day. He literally, talks about the Teletubbies. Um, um, work, the Jimmy Savile stuff is like never talked about, but that's kind of like you said, subtextual and something that's in the background, and maybe he kind of latched onto as a kid.
Mhm, mhm.
And also the religious stuff, the Satanist stuff is very interesting too. He has like this whole finger on everybody in his clan that like, old Nick's a thing and that he's actually my dad. And you realize that everybody in his clan wasn't born whenever he escaped, that they were born in this world
Mm,
and they are children of whatever bullshit that he feeds them. And I found that was really interesting to kind of, yes, we see these sort of like scenes that we've seen before of like sadism and torture and them having a lot of fun at everybody else's expense. But there is a lot to kind of like pick and chew on as you explored these little members of the clan as well. I
yeah.
enjoyed that.
And they are a group shaped by trauma, so obviously, like you said, our main Jimmy Crystal he is shaped by that day, with
Mm,
his father and how that forces him onto it, and then you have the various members of the group, the Fingers, they are all in different levels of, you've got Spike who's just joined and is watching this horrific stuff, and you think they all must have been on that level at some point until it becomes the normal, until they become so shaped by the traumatic things that they're seeing that they are now under the whim of Jimmy himself, and he can get them to do anything, and they can revel in it because
mm.
they're not human anymore. Essentially, they're these forces of nature, and you are terrified for anybody who ever comes in contact with them.
Their expendability was really surprising to me as
Yes.
well, that every time he just came across a new human being on his travels, he was like, "Well, here's the next opportunity for them to have a duel," and he would pit one of them to have a duel with the new member, and whoever survives that becomes the next finger.
Mm.
It's like, you're watching this clan, you're like, 5 years ago, if he was still doing this stuff, are any of these people in the original clan? It's like you always think that this is being recycled over and over again, and it's his own way of saying, "Oh, I'm fostering the community, my strengthening my fist," as he says, each finger is strengthening his fist. But it is just this sort of cycle of him just mass murdering over and over again.
Yeah.
And all this is besides the obvious thing. I think Jack O'Connell is so fun in this role. Like
Mm.
there's it is bewildering like the work he's been doing the last year with this and Sinners kind of produced two iconic villains in the space of a year, and like I think he deserves a lot of credit for what he does in this film.
Mm.
Tough role to tackle, and just seeing somebody on the opposite end of the spectrum, Ralph Fiennes, doing some gentle, amazing work. The character that was teased in the first movie, where we see Dr. Kelson in a scenario, and Spike is in that scenario. And just to kind of get an introspection of what his day to day life is and what he's
Mhm.
trying to achieve. This person, he obviously is really deeply hurt and has left a life behind, and has a lot of scars of his own, how he manages to peacefully deal with his day-to-day routine and see something which would be quite garish and very hard to deal with. I mean, he's surrounded by thousands of skulls that he himself has, curated and turned into this monument. And seeing him just kind of still deal with life with grace and gentleness is just so interesting in this world. Um, and then they both kind of collide in this ending, which is like insane,
Yeah.
so much fun.
Yeah.
Uh,
But before we
intense, but
get
yeah,
to the ending, can we talk
yeah,
a little bit more about his kind of relationship with Samson? Because that was the
that's
stuff
important.
that I
Yeah,
don't think you get kind of anything in the trailer that made me think that this was what I was going in to see. I had no idea that I was going in to watch him develop a relationship, essentially, like a friendly relationship, not like anything weird, with a zombie. And at first, it isn't so he uses the darts to sedate him, and it isn't until like maybe 20-25 minutes in where you realize that Samson wants to be
yeah,
sedated, and it turns into what you initially think of as like a junkie and a dealer and that relationship, until you realize there's more going on here. And, Kelson is trying to figure out what is going on inside of Samson's mind? And you're given a little glimpse of it at the very start. So he, throughout the film, he's trying to figure out if there's something underneath all the rage that's still human. And he develops this kind of cocktail of drugs to help subside some of
Yeah, he
those
says, like,
kind of symptoms of the rage virus.
yeah, because I guess it's the only time in the whole franchise where we've really sat down and talked about the the symptoms, and he's talking about, right, when he's picturing himself as Samson. He's like, if I'm Samson, what do I see? Like,
Mm,
why am I attacking a baby? Why am I trying to kill a child? What am I
yeah.
seeing in that moment? And he diagnoses it as, like, as you would, psychosis, and he says, well,
Mm.
psychosis is treatable, and we can't cure it, but we can lift the veil off it temporarily.
Uh-huh, uh-huh.
And that's what you see, and then you get these moments with Samson by himself, that train scene where
Oh,
he actually remembers his own childhood whenever the virus outbreak happened, and then
so
it's
good.
this, and it comes in this incredible scene where he's ripping heads off guys coming zombies coming into
Yeah, so that's
the train.
interesting because obviously he's diagnosed the symptoms, but the zombies don't recognize him as an alpha anymore. So
Mhm.
they go for him. So I don't
It's
know if
the
is he cured? Is he human again?
It does, yeah, you don't know if it does something scientifically or if it's something that's like, oh, he's not emotionally displaying the
Mm.
behavior of a zombie, but, like, there are moments whenever, yeah, there's close-ups of Samson whenever the veil is lifted, and he does just look like a human being. His eyes
Yeah,
aren't
yeah,
less
yeah.
his skin looks clearer.
He
Um,
covers his penis up.
the penis, yes, yes, he does have, later on, much later on, it's a third act cover up, for his penis, but apart from that, we get a lot of hog again in this
Yeah, we do
movie,
get a lot of hog.
and it's glorious, and, yeah, no, it's really fascinating stuff. I did not expect that, I did not expect to get that from this film at all, and I think that's what we were talking about, the expectation, it's so exciting to kind of go for a film where I'm like, yeah, I guess I have seen it some of this stuff before, like you're talking about the Journeys, but it's done so well,
Mhm,
and we're right in
mhm.
the belly of the beast here in the trilogy, and we're seeing the world in its shades of, we've seen the organized community in the village in the first movie, and now we're seeing what people who just wander the land, how they live, and it's the torture is medieval, very similar to the community in the first movie, where their community is very medieval in terms of its traditional values, and we have just kind of reverted back into this sort of peasantry era of Britain, and all these sort of this leaves this movie kind of like open to questions of where we go next. Is there anywhere to go? And we're at an even less certain place of where the last film of the trilogy is going to end, but it's really exciting to see what, Boyle and Garland's got boiled up, has got has got, concocted for the last film, so I'm really
Yeah.
excited. We
Which
have
it
to talk
has been confirmed now. They are
been greenlit.
100% making a third one. It's been greenlit. Obviously, we'll probably have to wait a little bit longer than we did have to for the Bone Temple to get that one, as it's not been shot yet.
Yeah, Laura
Um,
and to me is like, "Oh, if they're keep taking a break, like, what are gonna do about the Spike character?" Because he's obviously gonna be a few years older,
yeah.
right?
Have you seen him at the premiere as well? He was taller than both like Jack O'Connell and Danny Boyle.
He's got it.
He's had a proper growth spurt already.
Yeah,
I
it's gonna be.
appreciate those guys are probably not the standard bearers of tall people, though. I think they're both quite short, but
Yeah, I think they're both quite short. But it's like, yeah, it's quite interesting to see what they're gonna do with the next one. Go Gotta talk about the dancing,
yeah, yeah, we
the
can,
old Nick stuff and everything.
yes.
That is thrilling.
Yes. So as the worlds collide, we have the Jimmies believing that, from afar, that Ray Fiennes' character, Kelson, may be old Nick himself because he covers himself in iodine. He's got this kind of orangey red skin. He's got a temple made of bones. You can put two and two together and see why these people who believe that old Nick's a real
Yeah.
thing could maybe be like, oh, here he is. Jack O'Connell is like on the fence about this, but feels like he can use this to his advantage. He is somewhat a believer at first, I think, isn't
Well, yeah,
he?
because the whole film, you're like, this guy is full of shit, and the one Jimmy that latches on to Spike and looks after him. Played by Aaron Kellyman.
Erin Kellyman, yeah, who was the villain in Solo, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
she's in Star Wars. She was in Willow as well.
yeah,
Nobody saw Willow, but
yeah.
but I do enjoy her when she pops up. Was she in the Falcon and Winter Soldier as well?
She was the main villain in the Falcon and Winter Soldier. She was in Blitz.
Yeah. Oh, Blitz.
She was in the Green Knight as well.
Yeah, I really enjoyed her in this film too, and
Mm,
she is the one sort of like she's the only Jimmy that's semi-normal, arguably the most capable of the bunch of them, but
mm,
becomes a little bit of like she looks after Spike in the terms of like keep your head down. I know this is horrible too, but this is how we survive and this is how we
mhm.
get on in the world. And she's the only one that's kind of like, "This guy's absolutely full of crap." But then you're right, you realize that he confronts Ralph Fiennes for the first time, and he's like, "Are you old Nick?" It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
yeah,
He does believe his bullshit a little bit as well, doesn't it?
and it's because and that's tied to when his dad died, and he kind of religiously he thought he was ascending into like he was calling the zombies to arms and that he kind of saw this as a religious experience that he kind of mapped his whole life to. So there's context there. I do love that when he says like, "Are you old Nick?" and he just says, "No, I'm Ian."
Yes.
um I got a few laughs in the cinema too.
I
But
was
no,
surprised how funny the film was overall. Like, I laughed quite a bit at a lot of the film.
uh both Jimmy and Rhea Fiennes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Yeah, there's a great saying um where Dr. Kelson sedates Samson and he thinks he's managed to calm it down and they sit on a bank together and he falls asleep in this moment of trust and he's just like he wakes up and his head's still attached and
Yeah.
Samson's not there anymore. So he even when he came to Samson, he still didn't kill him, which is very
Yeah.
interesting.
It
Um
was the Samson dancing scenes as well, where he's
oh
dancing
yeah.
where they're both getting high on these opiates,
Yeah.
and they're
If
dancing
you're
in the moonlight together, and I was just like, it was just one of those things, it was like, I was not expecting to see this again from a 28 years later film, and I'm having an absolute blast with it.
yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's wacky, but it works.
Mhm. So Um, so Jimmy he respects Dr. Kelson in his private meeting with him, and,
Because
but
he is very easy to talk to, and you get that
he's
from
like
Ray Fiennes. You're like, "Yeah, I feel like I could sit down and have a conversation with this guy as well."
yeah, because he's, like, very interested in
Yeah.
in in you as a
He's
person.
very good at talking. He must have been a good GP, I reckon.
Oh, yeah, very good GP. Um, yeah, so Jimmy kinda says, "Well, like, the guys are kind of on to me now, and I kind of told them that you're old Nick. Can you please tell them that you're old Nick? And if you don't, I'm gonna kill you."
Yeah.
And then Griff finds is like, "Oh shit, I'm in a bit of a tight spot." So yeah, he goes to this elaborate event where lights the whole temple with candles and fire, does himself in gothic dark makeup, leather clad, and puts on a performance of Iron Maiden, which is so cool. It is
Amazing.
awesome.
It is that moment in the film where you're just like, "This is like, I was not expecting this, and I'm having so much fun in this moment." And he puts on a show, like,
Yeah.
he's selling the fact that he could be old Nick,
Yeah, even
and
like, if anything, it's Jimmy that's undermining it afterwards,
yes, yeah, yeah.
with his childish, like, sort of obvious, yeah, things that yeah, that the things that comes out of his mouth. He's got yeah, his child logic rots his mind and the film and, like, yeah, it's very interesting to see how and Dr. Kelson recognizes Spike and sees him behind the mask, and it becomes this real, like, intense moment of, yeah, upping the ante a little bit. That's a fascinating decision where he's as Satan. I need a sacrifice, and then I expected him to say Spike, for a minute, just so like, oh, like,
Yeah.
I want let me keep Spike, and I will sacrifice
That's
him or something. And then
that's
he's
what I
yeah,
thought it would like, yeah, I was like, "Oh, he's gonna be like, 'I need a child. I want to keep a child with me,' or something like that." like just ham up the fact that he just wants to keep Spike to save him. And I was like, Spike, take off your mask, please. But I
Yeah.
don't think he wanted any harm to
He
come
was
to
he
Kelson.
was well, he's also ashamed, I think, in front of Kelson too,
Mm,
that he was
mm,
associated with this, that he didn't want to be seen, that Kelson had seen him falling far from the tree that he
mm.
saw when he was with his mother in her last moments. So I think
Yeah,
there was a lot of guilt there.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but yeah, I'm super happy with this movie. I think, well, the end. We're talking about the very ending too. I wasn't.
Yeah.
Did you know you were expecting that?
Yeah, I was, only because I believe when they were, doing the press rounds of 28 years later, they like as in like the first one last year, they were like, Cillian Murphy doesn't turn up in this one, but he has a cameo in the next one. Like
Yeah.
that was what I'm pretty sure they were pushing that. So I was like,
He was at the premiere, but I still didn't like. I
I
wasn't
knew he
really
was
that
producing it,
into
and
it.
the idea was that if they get a third film, he would be in the third film more prominently. But they very much stated the fact that he was going to pop up somewhere, but it was going to be very small.
Mm.
So, yeah, as soon as we cut away to the house, and I recognized the house from the end of 28 Days Later, I was like, "Oh, here we go. Here's Killian."
Like, I'm very happy, that Nia DaCosta's got, like, a really big win as well, because I really do really like her as a filmmaker and find her work very interesting. Even going back to films like Candyman, I find her really, interesting filmmaker right off the gate. And, the first film in the 28 years franchise had a lot of haters already, I think, like, a lot
Mm,
of it divided a lot of tastes, and I was so ready, like, horribly ready for this to be mixed received and people to jump on the bandwagon. Oh, like, oh, I see, I told you so. This is what happens when you give a franchise to a woman. All those terrible things that you know are going to come out. And
mhm.
I'm like, I'm just glad that it's like this movie's kind of it's hard to argue that it's at the very least, if you didn't even like the movie, I think it's a hard movie to hate. I think it's
Mm,
even to all tastes.
yeah.
And I think it caters to people he like us, I really enjoyed the interesting things that were going on in the first movie, but we'll also bring back people who kind of lost the first time around too. Um, but I feel like we're just in the midst of a potentially an old timer trilogy, and
Yeah. I there was some elements from 28 years that I felt lacking, like that it was shot a lot nicer, which I know is a weird thing to like critique, but I did
mm,
like the rough and ready look of, shooting on an iPhone from the first film. Definitely feels like this film was not shot on an iPhone this time.
yeah,
It's not as experimental with the form, and it leaves some of the kind of interesting critiques of Britain as a whole, to the previous film, which I kind of wanted to see a continuation of. And then I was also a little bit sad that Spike was kind of relegated to a side character here. I don't think he was the driving force of the film. So
yeah.
like there are certain elements here which I was like, oh, I'm kind of sad, but I'm also happy that you know Boyle and whoever is kind of the and Alex Garland, I guess, like the driving force of the 28 years franchise, were happy to hand it to Nia DaCosta, but not be like, oh, you have to do it how we did it. Like that's nice that you could
Mm.
be like, you know, present this in any way you feel best benefits the story. That being said, I love the rough and readiness of 28 years later. Like I really did, and there was just something slightly lacking here. That wasn't as interesting,
I
even
still thought
though
it had a rough tone. I felt like visually had a rough and ready kinetic quality that wasn't really in line with the Jimmys as well. I thought, especially during that, like the barn scene and like the concert, the big Iron Maiden event that happened
mm,
at the end. I was like, the camera is like it is it's like being at a rave concert at the end of it.
mm,
Um,
but it's
I
cleaner, it's
it's
cleaner.
cleaner, but it's still of a pace and not jarring, and I
Mm,
think she does some really creative things. I think it's, like, one of her best visually looking movies, and I
mm,
feel and it's this whole thing of, like, time stopped in 2003 or 2002, and I feel like I felt like I was watching a 20-year-old movie too. Like, like, visually, like, something it aesthetically reminded me a lot of, like, the outdoor scenes in The Descent, like, earlier sort of Neil
mhm,
Jordan films, and, for, like, an American filmmaker, he has, limited British experience. I thought the vision was captured pretty well, but you're right, it doesn't have the things are like the freeze 60 kill shots and like the very interesting things that I loved in the first film. Like even that opening scene with Jimmy surviving and his parents dying, like straight off the bat, you're like, wow, this is like going for it. And like
Mm,
it does not care, it doesn't take prisoners if he likes it or not.
yeah.
And that ran a really long way enjoying that film. And this
I
one
f
is just like the middle chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's worth saying that, like, 28 years later was, like, kind of wacky with the form, and then
Mm.
this one is wackier with with the story details maybe, like, the whole Samson Kelson thing is quite interesting, and then, but it's not as wacky with the form and the way it's shot or anything like
Yeah.
that. You do get some really good like visuals, like the stuff at the end, where the upside down cross as Jimmy's nailed to it, and the Samson coming in and his kind of drug fueled vision of him as Satan is quite interesting. Um,
Krampus.
yeah. Do you think that's the last we'll see of Jimmy? I mean, it feels like it does, but then I'm intrigued because we
There's a sh-
started the last film with him, we ended it with him, and then obviously this film is like a continuation of him. But like
there's a jump
it's
scare of him of like a POV of him seeing as an infected run up to him at the
was
end,
that
isn't
not
there?
Samson?
It didn't look like Samson. It just looked like a generic
Oh, was it?
infected to
Okay.
me.
It was very
Um,
quick, I guess. It was a good jump scare.
Samson, like Frankenstein, like takes his master to, carries him off
Mm,
camera, doesn't he? And then yeah, it cuts to sort of everything.
yeah. But I just
Um,
wonder because obviously he was set up in the first film, like, and obviously with this being a middle chapter, it'd be weird to not. I don't
hmm.
know.
Maybe like I
If
think
that was it.
maybe if I'm thinking from DaCosta's point of view, maybe there was so much time reveling in the flaying and the horrible gore that Jimmy was responsible for that like granting him a gory death might have like been something that that character would have, you know what I mean? Like
Mm,
it's sort of glorifying the misdeeds of a character in a way.
yeah.
Tonally, it might have felt a little bit off. I thought he died in that moment, but and
I think so
he did have
too.
like pins put in his body and like bleeding
Yeah.
out. Probably he would have died from just that.
Yeah,
Um,
I think so too. I'm just saying it's like, he was the way the first film kind of sets him up, interesting to take him out in the second so quickly, but
I mean,
I don't mind really.
were you expecting a redemption arc for this character
No, I wasn't
whenever
expecting a redemption arc, but I'm just saying like it almost felt like
I'm not talking during the movie, I mean before the movie started. Like,
no, 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 no. But I thought
yeah,
maybe he's gonna be the big bad that looms above this
yeah,
trilogy potentially.
yeah. It's
And
just
he
interesting.
might be. We haven't seen his dead body.
That's true. That's
It's
true.
one of the rules.
Yeah. I'm interested. I have no idea where this is gonna go. I don't think
No.
Boyle's the filmmaker. Any other filmmaker is gonna ruin this last film and say, like, first 20 minutes, if they did, like, the Quiet Place treatment, it would be Cillian Murphy, which he coincidentally was in the sequel of that too. It would be Cillian Murphy, first 20 minutes of the next one, boring expo about how he survived it, why we're all here, the world's fucked. And I don't think the movie's gonna do that. I think the movie's just gonna go somewhere. I have no idea, but I'm really excited to see where it
Yeah.
goes.
So you're happy to
Yeah.
see Cillian Murphy at the end then?
Yeah, because there was nothing slavish about these 2 films in terms of owing it to the fans, and then to
Mm,
put that score in at the end, the
mm,
original score was unexpected,
yeah,
and it felt really cool
yeah,
is the simplest way to describe it. It was a very cool way to end the movie.
yeah, yeah, very interested to see where it goes next because it is open in terms of, yeah, we can do anything with that now. If I was Spike though, I appreciate it had its issues, but I'd go back to his hometown. Like after that, I'd be like, all right, I'm done exploring outside of here. There's some issues. My dad's a bit of a dick, but he's still my dad. Like
Yeah.
I think I'll go back.
Do you think
I
Aaron Taylor Johnson is gonna reappear?
Yeah, I think he has to, right?
Yeah.
I think there's so much more there, which I was surprised he didn't turn up in this one. Like it was never advertised that he was going to or anything like that. But if I was Spike, I'd be heading straight back there, and maybe he was by all means. I'm not sure what the
But I
geography of
guess
the whole
this whole
film is. He
film
ended in Cheddar Gorge last time, and then he's back at the Bone Temple here. So.
yeah, but, like, I mean, 95% of the world watching the 20 years later are not gonna know what Cheddar Gorge
No,
is,
I
so,
know, I'm
like,
just saying, I'm
you
saying
think
I
about
don't know what the geography is, alright?
it, but, like, when we watch any American film, I'm sure, like, we're like, "Ooh, well, they're just heading down the road," and people, like, in Texas are, like, saying, "That's, like, 100 miles from my place, they would
Yeah,
never go
yeah.
there," so, like,
They turn a street in
yeah.
New York and all of a sudden it's Vancouver.
Yeah, exactly, and
Yeah.
we're or Atlanta or whatever, yeah, so, I think we just have to take that one as British
Oh,
people on the chin.
100%. I am excited to see it. Yeah, but what would you do if you were Spike? Would you not be returning to that town? I mean, like I said, it's
I think because Jemima dies. That's the other one, sorry. Um, Kelly, who we find out is her real name, who survives it.
yeah.
Um,
Was she not a
she
Jim
she is
Oh, she's
she,
Jimmy Inc.
Jimmy Inc. Yeah, she survives with Spike, and they obviously, times passed. Also, we have also it's a skip in time. We don't know what happened between them surviving the whole Kelson Jimmy thing, and whenever we see Cillian Murphy at the end of the
That's
film.
true.
But I feel that if I was Spike, there's I'm with somebody who's very capable. I'm with somebody who is as normal as this world can churn out, and maybe sees a kindred spirit there, and somebody, the only person so far that won't judge him, um, or bring any more. But yeah, it's split for me. I could
Mm.
see why, but maybe that'll be explained.
Maybe that'll be explained. Yeah, yeah. I'm very interested to see where it goes. Like you said, it's so open to so many interesting possibilities, and the last film ended in a way where you're like, okay, who are these guys? I'm interested to see where this goes next, and then still was able to bring some really interesting ideas to the forefront that I wasn't expecting. And I hope the next film continues to do so because it's a franchise that inspired so many zombie things after it. To then return and still be able to say something new in this kind of genre is kind of fascinating to me. So yeah,
Yeah.
I
Oh,
and I'm excited to see what it says next time. They got to keep that up, right? They got to keep pushing the boat.
yeah.
I
100%.
want to know, like, is Samson, like, what's going on with Samson? I want to know. I hope we return to him. I hope we return to like how zombies are getting pregnant, all that kind of stuff. I'm really really intrigued.
Yeah, and it also, like, that whole plot line, I didn't find it jarring in the first film at all, but I know a lot of people will, and I feel like it'd be interesting for people to maybe didn't get on with the first movie to see this one and return to that and maybe have some of that,
What, the
like,
pregnancy?
yeah, the
Yeah.
pregnancy
See, I
scene.
didn't find it jarring. I just thought it was more like oh,
Yeah.
here's another interesting thing to think about.
I'm not saying me too. I exactly felt
Mm,
the same way,
mm.
but I know a lot of people did feel that
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah, of
So
course.
maybe that might be tempered by just watching the Bone Temple and going back, but I do think with Boyle, you're either like fist in the air going like, "I love what you're doing here," or you don't. And we were in the former, I think. So,
Yeah, yeah, big
um,
fan.
yeah, big fan of both movies so far. Can't wait to see where it goes. Uh, a lot of fun. Not really what you expect to see in January, but a lot of fun.
A lot of fun. A lot of fun. Wow. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed that double review episode. We've got a few ideas on the way for the coming weeks, so we don't 100% know what's going to be next week, but we have a couple of projects that are cooking, and some of them are dependent on other people. So we'll see how it goes.
There's no more movies. We've done them
There's
all.
no more movies. Yeah, we got some exciting stuff coming up. So yeah, look forward to that. We will be back next week for sure. But yeah,
That has been the episode for this week. If you've enjoyed it, make sure to leave us a 5-star rating or review. We do really appreciate it. If you'd like to keep up to date with us, make sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube as well at the
Yep.
Film Angle.
yeah, be sure to catch us next week for more cinematic discussions. Goodbye.
See you later.